Good afternoon from Switzerland, good morning or good evening to all of you worldwide, and welcome to this webinar on vertebroplasty in osteoporosis. My name is Dominique Pierrot. I am the science manager at IOF, and I'm glad to moderate this webinar. Voilà. Before introducing the speaker of the day, I would like to inform you that attendees are automatically muted. I also would like to encourage you to ask questions during the webinar by typing them in the question box of the control panel, and I will voice them to the speaker towards the end of the webinar. This being said, I'm very happy to introduce Professor Bernard Cortet, who is Professor of Rheumatology and Head of the Department at Hôpital de Lille in France. He is the current president of the Osteoporosis Information Research Group called the GRIO in France. He is an active member of the IOF Committee of Scientific Advisors and an author of numerous papers, including recommendations for the management of glucocorticoid-induced osteoporosis, postmenopausal osteoporosis, and osteoporosis in men, some of them on behalf of the GRIO. Professor Cortet, welcome, and we are listening to your presentation.
So thank you very much, Dominique, and also I would like to thank the IOF to let me the opportunity to talk about the use or the interest of vertebroplasty in the field of osteoporosis. May I have the next slide, please, Dominique? So here are my disclosures, and perhaps I would like, next slide, please, to briefly introduce my purpose. And what is vertebroplasty? Vertebroplasty consists in injection of cement, usually polymethyl methacrylate, in a compromised vertebral body. And there are two goals. The first one is to decrease pain and also to improve bone strength. Next slide, please. Briefly, I would like to focus on the context because vertebroplasty has been commonly practiced for many years, but yet, as you know, there is still debate regarding the interest or the absence of interest of vertebroplasty in the field of osteoporosis. Also, in a historical point of view, I would like to indicate that the method was developed by a French neuroradiologist in Amiens, in the north of France, also Professor Hervé de Ramon, and also a neurosurgeon, Professor Galibert, for treating aggressive vertebral hemangioma. And so, due to the potential interest of vertebroplasty, thereafter, other indications have been proposed. Bone metastases, and for many years, the field of osteoporosis is the main field in terms of performance of vertebroplasty. So my purpose will be to present the main data from the literature, obviously, but also to express some reservation about negative studies and explain positive studies by going beyond randomized studies. And finally, in my conclusion, I will try to specify the place of vertebroplasty in the field of osteoporosis. May I have the next slide, please? Next slide, please. As you know, 2 years ago, the ASBMR and the task force produced this paper indicating that clearly for the ASBMR, there is no place for vertebroplasty in the field of osteoporosis, and also there is no interest to perform new studies regarding vertebroplasty. It was the case for vertebroplasty, but also for kyphoplasty and for the use of spine jack. Next slide, please. We think, some of my colleagues, that there is a place for vertebroplasty, and recently we submitted to Osteoporosis International a position paper under the auspice of the GRIO and also the French Society of Rheumatology, indicating that there is a place for some patients to use vertebroplasty. And also, I wrote with my colleague and friend, Jean-Denis Laredo, who is an interventional radiologist in Lariboisière in Paris, in France, for indicating the the position of vertebroplasty in the field of osteoporosis. Next slide, please. I think the beginning of the studies is in 2009, and as you know, during this summer, 2 papers were published in the New England Journal of Medicine, in the same issue of the New England Journal of Medicine. Also, there was a context, and this context is that health authorities in the USA were concerned because there was a dramatic increase of performance of vertebroplasty. So they wanted to know whether or no there is an interest to perform vertebroplasty in the field of osteoporosis. Next slide, please. I would like to focus on the first study, the study by Bunchbinder. It was an Australian study. I would like to focus on some of the inclusion criteria, because to my knowledge, it was the first study with not a standard control group, with a conventional treatment, but with a sham procedure. So it was impossible for the patient to know whether or not he had the real vertebroplasty or the sham procedure. The main criteria was the evolution of pain at 3 months, measuring by visual analog scale, and also there were secondary criteria regarding quality of life, and also regarding function by using the Roland and Morris questionnaire. Next slide, please. Here are the characteristics of the 2 groups, and as you can see, the number of patients, including the study, was quite low. Next slide. And also, I think, as you know, particularly at 3 months, but also it was the case at 6 months, there was a decrease of VHS over time, but there were no difference between the 2 groups, indicating that there is perhaps no interest to performing vertebroplasty. It was the case for the pain, but also it was the case for quality of life by using a generic or specific questionnaire. And also it was the case for pain as indicating at rest or no. Next slide, please. Here are the same result, but it is a graph, but the conclusion obviously is the same. Next slide, please. And as indicating in the same issue of the New England, there was a second study. It was an American study published by Colmes and colleagues. The inclusion criteria were quite similar, but also there is a possibility to be included not from the result of MRI, but from a bone scan, and I think it's criticable, but it was the case. And the conclusion was exactly the same, as you can see at the figure in this slide. Also, there was a possibility to change of group, but it is not my topic today. Next slide, please. I would like to do some comments regarding these 2 studies, because as I previously mentioned, the small sample size should be emphasized. Also, the duration of pain, because as you can see, there was a possibility to include patients with pain evolving from a very long period until 1 year. Also, there was not always indisputable signs of recent fracture, because we know at present that bone scan is not the relevant exam to know whether or not it is a recent vertebral fracture. Also, for one of the studies, the study from Colmes, the level of pain to be included was quite low, because the threshold was for a VAS greater than 3 only. And finally, a sham procedure is not a real placebo, because there was a use of a local anesthetic. Next slide, please. So thereafter, 1 year later, another study was published by the group of Paul Lollet in the Netherlands. Next slide. And the inclusion were inclusion criteria were quite different because the level of pain was greater, the evolution of pain was less than 6 weeks, and for all the patients on the MRI, there was a bone edema. Also, the number of participants was quite higher as compared with the 2 previous studies, but it's true, there was one difference because the control group was conservative therapy. It was not with or against a sham procedure. On this time are the main characteristics of the patient. Next slide, please. So, and I think you know that, under this condition, the study was positive, and in the 2 groups, you can see that there was over time a decrease of pain, but the decrease was greater for patient treating by vertebroplasty, and the result, as you can see, are maintaining over time. Next slide. It was the case for the pain, but also it was the case with an interesting trend for quality of life assessed by the QALYFO, but also by using generic questionnaires. Next slide, please. It was the case also by using the Roland and Morris questionnaire. Next slide, please. A few years later, another study against a sham procedure was done by Clark and colleagues, and in this study, the inclusion criteria was quite rigorous, not using VAS, but an NRS, numeric rating scale, over 7, and also the duration of pain to be included was quite low. And also the main criterion for evaluating the efficacy of vertebroplasty was quite different as compared with other studies, and it was the number of patients with pain on NRS less than 4 at D14. Next slide, please. Here are the main characteristics of the patient in the 2 groups. Next slide, please. And as you can see, the results were positive because the number of patients for whom there is a dramatic decrease of pain at 4 weeks was higher in patients receiving the sham procedure. In other words, I'm sorry, there is a decrease over time, as indicated on this slide, of NRS. But curiously, if you look at VAS, the difference was not so important. And also, I think there was an interesting trend in terms of evolution of quality of life as assessed by the QALYFO, but also by using a generic questionnaire. And finally, I think it's a point that we should be emphasized. You can see that the decrease of the analgesic use was greater for patients treated by vertebroplasty and not with the sham procedure, and particularly 6 months after the performance of vertebroplasty. Next slide, please. It is obviously the same result, and you can see that there was clearly a difference. And also, Clark and colleagues did some sub-analysis, and they compare the evolution of pain according to the site of the vertebroplasty, and you can see that the best result were obtained for patients with vertebral fracture at the thoracolumbar level, and also for patients with a duration of pain which was very, very low, less than 3 weeks. But due to the number of patients included, I'm not sure that this type of analysis are clearly relevant. Next slide, please. More recently, another study was published by the group of Paul Lollet. It was the VERTOS-4 study. Next slide. And inclusion criteria were exactly the same as compared to the VERTOS 2 study that I previously presented. So it was represented by a patient with pain evolving for less than 6 weeks. And also there was a need to have an MRI, a bone edema. But the main difference between these two studies was that in the study published near that 10 years ago, the VERTOS 2 study, it was against a conventional treatment for vertebral fracture, such as bracing, analgesic use, etc., etc. Whether in the study published in the British Medical Journal more recently, it was against a real sham procedure. Next slide. Here are the main characteristics of the patients included, with a high number of patients in each group, very comparable as compared with the study published 10 years ago by the same group. Next slide, please. But as you know, I think the results were quite similar, quite different. I'm sorry, as compared to the study published 10 years ago. As you can see, there is a dramatic decrease of pain over time, but you can see that this decrease is similar in the two groups, vertebroplasty and a sham procedure. Next slide. On this graph, the results obviously are exactly the same, and you can see that the two curves are quite similar. Next slide, please. There are perhaps some difference, because if you consider the number of patients at the end of the study, I'm sorry, 1 year after the beginning of the study, you can see that the number of patients with a high level of pain defined by a VAS greater than 5 was twice as compared to patients treated by conventional therapy. Next slide, please. So, as you can see, there are some difference between the studies, and in the field of studies against a sham procedure, also there were some difference. So why there are these difference? Exactly, I don't know, but I would like to focus on some difference between the study from Clark and colleague and from the study of Finarescu from the group of Paul Lawley. First, the mean age was older in the study by Clark and colleagues. Secondly, a majority of patients from the study by Clark were hospitalized patients for this vertebral fracture, where all the patients from the study of Finarescu were outpatient. Also, the level of pain at baseline was quite higher in the study by Clark and colleague. And finally, the sham procedure was not exactly the same into the two studies. Next slide, please. At present, there is an ongoing study, VERTOS 5 study. The results at present are unknown, but I know that the study is now finished. And the inclusion criteria were quite different as compared with the study published at present. So the VERTOS 5 study focused on patients with pain, a high level of pain, but with a pain evolving for more than 3 months, and also with a positive MRI, i.e. an MRI with a bone edema on TD, on T2 pictures. So I think that the result of this study will be published this year. Next slide, please. Also, perhaps there is a possibility to have another approach. You know that vertebral fracture are considered by Bliuk and colleague as a major fracture, as hip fracture, high fracture associated with a high risk of death. So the question is to know if vertebral fracture are associated with an increased risk of death, whether or not vertebroplasty is capable to reduce the risk of death. And so we have some studies regarding this question. And to my knowledge, the first one was published about 10 years ago in the JBMR in the Medicare database. Next slide, please. So in this database, there was a high number of patients with vertebral fracture, and obviously the great majority of these patients have a conventional management with the use of analgesic and with bracing, etc. But also in this population, there was a number of patients for whom vertebroplasty was performed. Next slide. The objective was not to assess the interest in terms of pain reduction, because it was not possible due to the design of the study, but to know whether or not, according to the group of the patient, vertebroplasty or not vertebroplasty, there is an impact on mortality. And as you can see on this slide, there is a great reduction in the rate of mortality for patients treated by vertebroplasty compared to patients treated by conventional therapy. Next slide. Several years ago, another study was also performed on the Medicare database, but using only a part of the database, 20%, during a period of time different as compared to the study from Edidin and colleagues. And you can see that there is a favorable impact on mortality, with a reduction of mortality of about 20%. But you can see obviously that the result is smaller as compared with the previous study. Obviously, the results were presented after multiple adjustments. But next slide, please. If you use, in terms of adjustment, a propensity score, which is, to my knowledge, the best method, you can see that there was no difference between the two groups. Next slide, please. I think the best study on this issue was performed recently by Hong and colleague, because he used the overall database of Medicare, and because there was a great period of time for evaluated the impact of vertebroplasty in terms of mortality. And as you can see, if you compare non-surgical management versus vertebroplasty, you can see that in this study there was a great impact in terms of improvement of mortality, particularly the first years and the second years. And you can see also that over time, the difference between the two groups in terms of mortality is necessarily shorter. Next slide, please. Another aim of this study was to compare the impact of the two publications of the New England. So there is a part before the two publications and also a second part after the publication. The first point is that in 2008, in the Medicare database, there was a great number of patients who are treated by vertebroplasty, 24%. And obviously, you can see that there was a great impact of the two publications from the New England Journal of Medicine, because in 2014, the number of patients treated by vertebroplasty in the Medicare database was only 14%. And also, and finally for this publication, the authors compared the evolution of the rate of death between these two periods. And as you can see on this slide, the rate of death was slightly greater during the second period as compared to the first period, about 4%. But I'm not sure that this type of approach is really relevant, but it was one conclusion of the others. It is not obviously my conclusion, but I would like to show you this data. Next slide, please. Very recently, last year, a meta-analysis was done regarding the impact of vertebroplasty on death. Next slide, please. There were several studies as indicated, and for the studies from the Medicare database, the author retained only the study that has discussed recently, published by Hahn and colleague in Osteoporosis International 3 years ago. Next slide, please. So I think the results overall are very interesting because in this meta-analysis, by definition, taking into account all the studies for whom we had information regarding the evolution of death after the performance of vertebroplasty, and you can see that there was an impact, and there is a decrease of the rate of death as compared with conventional therapy of about 20%. It was the case for the overall evaluation, and also, next slide, please. It was the case 5 years after the performance of vertebroplasty, indicating that perhaps this favorable impact of death is maintaining over time. Next slide. Also, the others perform a sensitivity analysis, and as you can see, by eliminate one of these studies, the results were exactly the same, indicating that these results are robust and indicating that over this meta-analysis, there is really an impact, a favorable impact of vertebroplasty in terms of decreasing the rate of death. Next slide, please. So the final part of my talk will be focused obviously on safety. Next slide. Obviously, if you introduced cement into a compromised vertebra, obviously there are leaks of cement as indicating on this slide. Next slide. And you can see some slide from a CT evaluation indicating that clearly and obviously there are leaks outside the vertebral body, and particularly leaks in soft tissue. Next slide. And for example, if you look at the VERTOS 4 studies, the other indicated that on CT scan the leaks were very frequent because they considered that 65% of the patients included in the VERTOS 4 studies have leaks outside the vertebral body. But obviously, all these leaks were totally asymptomatic. Next slide, please. Another question is to know whether or no, by performing vertebroplasty, there is an increase of the risk of fracture on the other vertebra, and particularly for adjacent vertebra of the vertebroplasty. Next slide. It is particularly the case for the sandwich vertebra. Next slide. There are some argument and biomechanic argument indicating that on adjacent vertebra as compared to the vertebra treated by vertebroplasty, there is an increase of strength. It is the case on the plate of the vertebra, but also it is the case for the intervertebral disc. Some studies, but perhaps with some bias, indicating that there is a rationale for thinking that there is an increased risk of recurrent fracture, and particularly for vertebra adjacent to vertebra treated by vertebroplasty. And a few years ago, we published a retrospective study on this issue. But next slide, if you now consider a really randomized study and more recent studies, you can see that there is no difference. And for example, these data are extracted from the study by Claassen and VERTOS-2 study published about 10 years ago. You can see that the number of patients for whom a new non-incident vertebral fracture was diagnosed was exactly the same for patients treated by vertebroplasty or for patients treated by the same procedure. And also, it was the case for all the incident fracture, and particularly it was the case for adjacent fracture. And you can see on this slide that there was no difference between patients treated by vertebroplasty and with conservative therapy. And overall, the number of recurrent fracture for adjacent fracture was slightly greater for patients treated by conservative therapy, but without difference between the two groups. And also, it was the case for the sandwich vertebra. Next slide. These results were also confirmed by the study published more recently by the group of Paul Lollet through the VERTOS-4 study. And with the mean follow-up at about 1 year, you can see that the number of incident fracture was exactly the same for patients treated by vertebroplasty and for patients treated by the sham procedure. And there was clearly no difference between the two groups. And clearly on this finding, I think we can conclude that vertebroplasty does not cause new fractures. Next slide, please. Also, it is interesting to focus on the evolution of the 8 vertebra over time, both for patients treated by vertebroplasty or for patients treated by a sham procedure. And as you can see in this slide, extract from the study from Firanescu and collaborators, there was a difference because only 7 patients in the group of patients treated by vertebroplasty had a loss of vertebral height, whereas 36 patients have a loss of vertebral height for patients who were treated by a sham procedure. And this difference was highly significant. So clearly, vertebroplasty protects against the risk of vertebral further compression, and it is possible that also it protects again a risk of increasing kyphosis over time. Next slide, please. These all results were confirmed in a meta-analysis recently published by Liu and colleagues 2 years ago in Osteoporosis International. And it was the case for all the fracture, clinical fracture, but also for incident fracture diagnosed on X-rays. Next slide. So to summarize the part of the safety, clearly in expert hands, there are no more serious complications. Also at present, I think that we can say that the risk of vertebral fracture adjacent to the cemented vertebra is not found in recent studies. And on the other hand, and I think it's quite important, a cemented vertebra fracture is never progressive. And now I will conclude. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, vertebroplasty is useful not obviously for all the patients with vertebral fracture, but we think that it's useful for some patients with osteoporotic vertebral fracture. And I think there are perhaps two types of indication for performing vertebroplasty. First, it is in the acute phase, and so efficacy is demonstrated in elderly patients with a high level of pain and numerous comorbidities, especially if they are hospitalized. And it is only the summary of the study published by Clark and colleague some years ago in the Lancet. And very more recently, in the last issue of Osteoporosis International, there was a letter in this kind of population indicating that for the elderly, there was an efficacy of vertebroplasty in this condition, and also that the performance of vertebroplasty for the elderly was interesting in terms of medical approach, and not only medical, in terms of cost for the society. And also, it is not sure across the studies that I presented, but perhaps after 3 months, vertebroplasty is probably useful if pain persists and if there is on MRI on TD Waiter picture a bone edema, and the definitive result of this type of indication will be given by the result of the VERTOS 5 study. So thank you really for your attention, and perhaps, and I hope, some question will be asked.
Thank you very much, Professor Corte, for your clear and excellent talk and for covering a topic that stimulates many questions, I can reassure you. Now, I'm sure that the audience greatly appreciated your talk. And now I would like to move to questions as we have received many of them. Maybe I will start by grouping two questions slightly related. One question is, what study could better specify the place of vertebroplasty? What would be the design of this study? And Professor John Carey is asking also if such a trial should include 4 arms like vertebroplasty, kyphoplasty, sham, and conservative radiology treatment.
It's a very good question, obviously. In France, we tried to perform this type of study, but it was very, very difficult, and we did not have a sufficient number of patients for participating. And so, unfortunately, we not have a result on this type of study. I think it's interesting. At present, I'm not sure that there is, in terms of pain improvement, any difference between kyphoplasty and between vertebroplasty. And as you know, the potential interest of kyphoplasty as compared to vertebroplasty is perhaps to improve kyphosis. But in the few studies done with this objective, and particularly the caviar study, finally, there was not a great difference in terms of local or general kyphosis for patients treated by kyphoplasty as compared to vertebroplasty. Also, if you perform and if you need to perform such as a study, I think we need to to consider the patient to be included. And I think the patient that should be included should not be outpatient, but perhaps more patient hospitalized or patient with a very, very high level of pain.
Thank you. Johan Fagerström is asking if there is a difference between vertebroplasty versus kyphoplasty in terms of relief of pain and risk of additional adjacent fracture.
Thank you for this question. As I've previously indicated, to my knowledge, particularly through the CAVIAR study that I previously cited, there was no difference in terms of pain improvement between the two methods. As it was demonstrated by vertebroplasty, also there is no clear increase of the risk of recurrent fracture, particularly incident fracture, for patients treated by kyphoplasty. And in the CAVIAR study, comparing the two methods, kyphoplasty versus vertebroplasty, to my knowledge, there was no difference in terms of incident vertebral fractures between the two groups, but also to my knowledge, there was no control group.
There is another question on this difference by Dr. Ali Otom, asking if you can elaborate on the causes of mortality in non-surgical and surgical group, and which is safer, vertebroplasty or kyphoplasty?
Very, very good question. Unfortunately, as you know, these type of results are extracted from medical database, and on this database, we have a very low number of information regarding the patients. But in terms of mortality, there was a decrease of mortality, as I previously indicated, but the cause of mortality were quite similar into the two groups. In this type of analysis, but I think we should be cautious regarding the result. There was indeed a comparison between vertebroplasty and kyphoplasty, and the result were, in terms of impact of mortality, were greater for kyphoplasty against vertebroplasty. It was the case for the study that I presented and that was published about 10 years ago by Eddie Dean and colleague, and also it was the case for the more recent study across the Medicare database published more recently by Hong and colleague. But I think this type of analysis is obviously interesting. It is the reason why I present this result, but also we should be cautious because by definition, these studies are retrospective studies, uncontrolled studies, and I'm not sure that the comparison of the rate of death between the two methods, vertebroplasty and kyphoplasty, is really, really relevant. And on the US, as you know, the performance of kyphoplasty is more frequent as compared to vertebroplasty.
Thank you. Another question from Patricia Clark. She's asking you to comment on the Cochrane meta-analysis by Buchbinder published in 2018, where there were like 21 trials included with 4 randomized control trials. Sorry. Do you notice? Can you comment on this study?
Yes, clearly, overall, my conclusion is that we didn't perform vertebroplasty. It is clear that vertebroplasty should not be performed for the great majority of patients with vertebral fracture. But from I think this analysis of the literature, but also from my personal point of view, but also from some French colleague, there is an interest for some patient, and these patients are the patient on which I emphasize in my conclusion. So particularly hospitalized patient for acute pain due to vertebral fracture with a high rate of comorbidities, because for this patient, if you do nothing, there is clearly an impact, a défavorable impact in terms of morbidity, but also in terms of mortality. But really, I need to be perhaps clearer. I think there is an interest for performing vertebroplasty, but for a short proportion of patients as compared to the overall patient with vertebral fracture.
Thank you. There is a
just one quick comment. I'm sorry. Obviously, if you do a meta-analysis, you aggregate all the studies, and it is clear that, as indicated, that the number of negative studies are higher as compared to positive studies. But I think these positive studies are focused on a small category of patients with vertebral fracture, and my opinion is that for this patient, there is an interest to perform vertebroplasty.
Thank you. Another question from John Carey is asking if you can explain the difference between clinical trials and observational studies. Like is mentioning that clinical trial of medications usually include thousands of people and have a duration of 3 to 5 years. Should this be done also for vertebroplasty studies?
Could you repeat the question, because I'm not sure that I understand clearly the question.
I think he's asking you whether like the vertebroplasty study should include more patients and should look at a longer endpoint, like the clinical trial testing some medications.
Yeah, clearly, but it's very, very difficult to include a great number of patients, and particularly if you look at patients with acute pain, because, for example, in the VERTOS 2 studies or in the VERTOS 4 studies, the others have increased the duration of pain because the number of patients was not sufficient to be included. But my opinion is that the difference between the study are more related to the fact that the patient included was not exactly the same. And I think it was the main difference between the study by Clark and colleague as compared to other study, and particularly the last study from the group of Paul Lollet published 3 years ago in the BMJ.
Thank you. Kassim Javed is asking, what about sacroplasty? Because sacral fracture are also a big problem. Is there any data?
It's a very, very, very interesting question. And as he said, it is clear that also sacral fracture are fracture with a poor prognosis and with an increased risk of death. And so we have some data, but I think we have no data with a high level of evidence in terms of type of studies. I think there are some series of patients, including indicating that there is an effect, but to my knowledge, there is no real randomized studies, and obviously with against a sham procedure. But if the question is, do we perform in our hospital sacroplasty, the answer is yes. And I think the indication in terms of profile of patient are quite similar to the profile of patient who should benefit from vertebroplasty.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Dr. Pavel Mazarik is asking whether if there is vertebroplasty is contraindicated in a rebound vertebral fracture after interruption of therapy by denosumab.
Yes, from my opinion, I think that the concern is not the use or not of denosumab, but I consider that a patient with a cascade fracture is not a good indication for performing a vertebroplasty for several reasons. The first one, as indicated, that even there is no clear increase of the risk of adjacent vertebral fracture, it is clear that if you have a cascade fracture, there is a dramatic increase of the risk of incident fracture. And also in this patient, is very, very, very difficult to know the vertebra that should be treated by a vertebroplasty. And I think in this condition, there are a lot of mechanisms explaining the pain, and I'm not sure that the only mechanism should be the vertebral fracture at 1 or 2 levels. So clearly, from my opinion, a cascade fracture is not a good indication for performing a vertebroplasty.
Okay, thank you. Another question from Donato Agnus Dei is asking you to confirm, or is that what you are suggesting, that regardless of the results of the study, an accurate selection of patients in which vertebroplasty is appropriate is recommended?
Yeah, I fully agree. Clearly, I think that the debate regarding the efficacy or the absence of efficacy is perhaps not the good question, but the question is, as it has indicated, is to select the best patient. And I think I obviously indicating, to my knowledge, the best patient for performing a vertebroplasty. And clearly, as previously indicated, is a small number of patients, but I think in this patient, there is a clear and, to my opinion, a well-demonstrated efficacy of vertebroplasty.
Thank you. Dr. Baguer-Larijani is asking, is referring to the recent AACE guideline for osteoporosis management, where there is no place for vertebroplasty or kyphoplasty. Is asking you to comment and to explain your recommendation and your evidence.
I think my purpose, as I previously indicating, is not to say that vertebroplasty is the treatment of osteoporosis. Obviously, I didn't say that. And obviously, for all the patients treated by vertebroplasty, there is a need to begin, obviously, an anti-osteoporotic treatment. I think we cannot say that there is no interest to perform vertebroplasty because from also a clinical point of view, and I see as outpatient a high number of patients, and also I see hospitalized patients, and I think for the patient that has defined and the profile of this patient are very similar to those included in the study by Clark and colleague. Clearly, I think there is an indication, but this type of patient represent a very low proportion of patient as compared to the overall patient with a vertebral fracture.
Okay, thank you. And I think it's now time to conclude. I would like to really thank very much all the participants in this webinar. We hope that you enjoyed this session. We will post the recording of this webinar on the IOF website, and you will also receive the link by email tomorrow. And so right after this webinar, you will be prompted to fill in a survey. We would appreciate your input and comments as we continuously try to deliver webinars that meet your needs. Last but not the least, if you have any questions, comments, please do not hesitate to send them over to webinar@iofbonehealth.org. Professor Cote, I would like really to thank you for this outstanding presentation and for answering all these questions. And I would like to say goodbye to everybody, and hopefully see you next month in February for the next Bonecast webinar. Goodbye to everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye too.
Bye-bye.